Watch the half second, not the answer and the half second before it. Someone at a party asks the question everybody asks. So what do you do? 6 words. Casual, friendly, meaningless. And in the half second before you answer, you already know that whatever comes out of your mouth is about to change the temperature of this entire conversation. Say one thing, and they lean in. Say another, and they start looking for somewhere else to be. Same party, same person, same half second, different number. So let's run the experiment properly. One man, 6 incomes, 0, 30,000, 60, 100, 250, and $1 million a year. He doesn't change, not his jokes, not his laugh, not the way he listens slightly too long before replying. The only thing we're going to change is the number attached to him. Everything else stays fixed. Same friends, same family, same group chat, same coworkers, same aunt at the same dinner table. And at every single rung, we're going to watch what those people do and what they say, what they stop saying, who answers the phone, who goes quiet, and who suddenly has a business idea for him. Here's what makes it worth 20 minutes of your life. The treatment doesn't just get better as he climbs. That's what everyone expects, and it's wrong. It gets stranger. Some things get better, some things quietly get worse, and a few things at the very top look almost exactly like they did at the very bottom, for reasons nobody sees coming. And by the time he reaches $1 million a year, there's one question sitting there that changes how you read every conversation you've ever had about money. Were any of these people ever reacting to him at all? 6 rungs, one man, let's climb. Start at 0. Not broke in the temporary way. 0. No job, no incoming, a bank balance you check with the phone tilted away from the room. The mornings are the worst part because they're empty in a way that has no edges, nothing to be late for, nothing that would notice if you never got up. The first thing that goes is the response time. You send a message to a friend and it sits there, delivered, read even. And then nothing for a day, maybe 2. And then a reply so short it barely qualifies. A thumbs up, a yeah, for sure, let's do something soon. They're not cruel. That's what makes it confusing. These are good people who like you. But you've become a message that requires something, and requirements are heavy, and everyone's phone is already full of heavy things. The group chat is the clearest signal. It still goes. 40 messages while you slept. Plans forming, jokes landing, someone's photo from somewhere, and you type something and it lands in the middle of it, and the conversation just keeps moving. Not around you exactly, through you. You start reading the chat without answering. It's easier. There's no version of your day that fits into it. Everyone else is describing things that happened. You'd be describing a thing that didn't. Then there's family, which is its own particular flavor of it. They don't ignore you at all. They engage. They engage a great deal. And every single conversation, no matter where it starts, arrives at the same place, the place where they tell you what you should be doing. Have you tried, they say. Have you thought about my friend's son did this thing? You should call him. You should just walk in with a resume. That's how it worked in my day. You should smile more in the interviews. You should lower your expectations a little just for now. None of it is wrong exactly. Some of it is even useful. But you notice something underneath it, something you don't have a name for yet, and it's this. Nobody asks your opinion anymore. They tell you theirs. The conversation has become one-directional, and you're the direction. Advice is what people give you instead of respect. It's the tell. Because you don't advise your equals, you ask them things. You advise the people you've quietly filed under in trouble, and the filing happens fast, and nobody tells you it's happened. An uncle at a dinner explains your own industry to you. He's never worked in it. He's got it about 40% right. And you sit there and you nod because correcting him would be arguing. And arguing is what people do who think they have standing. That's the thing about zero. It isn't only the money. It's that you slowly stop being someone whose take on things matters, and you can feel the change happening in real time at a dinner table with a fork in your hand. You get a job, 30,000 a year. The relief of it is enormous for about 11 days. There's somewhere to be. There's a card in your wallet that works. And when someone asks what you do, you have a sentence, a real one, with a job title in it and everything. And then you say the sentence out loud at a gathering, and you watch what it does. It does almost nothing. There's a small nod. That's great. Good for you. And then the conversation moves on, gently, without friction. The way water goes around a rock, it doesn't need to think about. This is the second thing, and it's stranger than the first. You've stopped being a problem, and you haven't become anything else. You've become invisible, not disliked, not judged, just not particularly relevant to anybody's evening. At 0, you were at least a story. There was concern. There were opinions. At 30,000, you're fine. And fine is the least interesting thing a person can be. Nobody asks a follow-up question about fine. You notice who stops competing with you, too. At 0, nobody competed. You weren't in the race. At 30,000, you're technically in it, and technically last. And people are generous with you in the specific way that costs them nothing, because you're not a threat to a single thing they have. He's doing his best. You overhear it once, secondhand. From a relative who meant it warmly, he's doing his best. And it should feel like support, and instead it lands like a ceiling, because it's the thing people say about someone whose best they've already priced in. There's a moment at a restaurant, a birthday, 12 people. The bill lands and it splits evenly, and evenly is more than you'd have chosen. And you hand your card over, and there's a half second, this tiny nothing half second, where you're watching the waiter's hand more closely than you'd like to admit. It goes through, of course it goes through, but you had to watch. And the person across from you didn't have to watch, and doesn't know that watching is a thing that some people at this table are doing. And that's the whole difference between the two of you, invisible in plain sight. You get good at a specific set of skills here. Ordering second, suggesting the place, being busy on the weekend of the trip. Nobody ever knows. That's the point. The entire craft of it is that nobody ever knows. And when it comes up, when someone at the table talks about money the way people do when it isn't a thing, you laugh along in exactly the right places. You've got the timing down cold. You've had a lot of practice. 60,000. Here's where something shifts, and it shifts with strangers first, which surprises you. You say what you do at a party, and this time there's a follow-up question. Oh, really? How'd you get into that? And it's such a small thing, a single extra sentence, but you feel it land in your chest like a coin in a slot. Strangers are the honest sample. Your friends know you. They'll be kind regardless. They've got history to override the number. Strangers only have the number. So strangers show you the raw price, unsentimentally, in real time. And the price just went up. And you think briefly that you've solved it. That this is what the last 5 years were missing. A few thousand more. And the world simply turns toward you. You'll spend the next decade finding out that the world turns toward every number. It just turns differently each time. You get listened to differently, not more agreeably, more carefully. When you say something in a meeting, there's a beat before the response. When you make a recommendation, it gets tried. You're not smarter than you were at 30,000. Everyone's just decided that you might be. You start dressing slightly better, and you notice that the slightly better clothes generate slightly better treatment. And you notice how cheaply the whole system can be gamed, and that noticing puts a small permanent crack in how you see all of it. And then the other thing starts, the hinting. It's never a direct request. It's an aunt describing a situation. It's a cousin mentioning in passing that things have been tight, and then not asking, and letting the not asking sit there in the air between you, doing the work that asking would have done. You know what's being asked, they know you know. And the entire architecture of the conversation is designed so that neither of you ever has to say it, because saying it would make it a request, and a request could be declined, and this way it just becomes a thing you're carrying. 60,000 is not wealth. You know this. You've done the math on rent, and it's the same math it always was, only slightly less frightening. But you've crossed some invisible line where you became, in the eyes of certain people, a resource. And here's the part that stays with you. The same relative who spent your 0 years telling you what you should be doing with your life has stopped telling you what to do. Completely. The advice dried up the moment the hinting started, because you can't advise a resource, you damage it. So the tone goes warm, genuinely, uncomplicatedly warm. And you can't tell anymore which part of the warmth is you and which part is the number, and you'll never be able to tell again for the rest of your life. That's the real toll at 60,000, and it costs nothing, and it's permanent. You've lost the ability to read a room cleanly. There's a variable in every interaction now that wasn't in it before, and you can't factor it out. 6 figures, 100,000. You say it to nobody ever. That's the first rule, and you learn it fast. But people work it out. From the neighborhood, from the car, from the fact that you booked the thing without asking what it cost. Money is loud even when you keep your mouth shut. And the jokes start. That's the sound 6 figures makes. The jokes. Must be nice. Someone says it after you mention a trip. Must be nice. 3 syllables, delivered smiling, and everyone laughs. And it's a joke. It's obviously a joke. And you laugh too, because what else is there? And it's got a hook in it. A little barb small enough to deny if you ever mentioned it, which you won't. Look at Mr. Big Shot. The tab's on you, right? Easy for you to say. Every one of them has the same structure. A compliment wearing a costume, or an accusation wearing a compliment. You honestly can't tell which, and you suspect the person saying it can't either. The friendship survives it, mostly. But there's a topic you can't be honest about now, and it's a topic that touches everything. Where you live, what you do on weekends, what you worry about at 2 in the morning. So you start editing. Just a little. Just the numbers. You round down. You say a trip was cheaper than it was. You don't mention the raise for 3 months. You let people assume the older car is the only car. And none of it is lying exactly. It's just smoothing. Making yourself easier to be around. Dating changes. And it changes in a way you can't get a clean read on, which is the whole problem. It's better. Objectively, measurably better. More replies, more interest, more warmth from people who weren't warm before. And you'd have to be a fool not to notice the timing. So a question moves in and never leaves. Is this person here for me, or for the version of me that has this? And there's no test for it. There's no way to check without blowing the whole thing up. You just carry the question around, quietly, into every good moment you have. At work, it's the luck thing. He got lucky. Right place, right time. He knew somebody, and maybe you did. Probably you did. Everybody does. But you also did the work. All of it. The boring years nobody saw, and none of that survives the retelling. Because your success is a story other people are telling about themselves. If you got lucky, then the reason they're not there is luck, and that's a comfortable place to stand. If you earned it, then they'd have to look at their own decade. Nobody's picking the second one on a Tuesday afternoon. You stop correcting it. That's the thing. You just let them have the luck story because arguing makes you the guy who argues about how great he is, and there's no winning move on that board. So it stands forever, and you carry the true version around alone. And the friends who joke, and the coworkers who shrug, and the relatives who hint. They've all got one thing in common you won't see for years. Not one of them is angry at you. Every last one of them is negotiating with a number in their own head, and you're just the thing that made the number visible. 250,000. This is where the drift starts, and the drift is the quietest violence in the whole ladder, because nothing happens. Nobody fights. There's no falling out, no bad night, no thing that was said. There's just a text you meant to answer, and then a month, and then a year. The old friends don't leave. They fade. Someone gets married and you find out on the internet. Someone's father dies and you hear about it late from a third party and you send something and it's fine. It's completely fine, and something between you has quietly closed. You could blame them and it wouldn't be true. You could blame yourself and that wouldn't quite be true either. The honest version is duller. You now have a life that's hard to describe at their table without it sounding like a brag. And they have a life that's hard to describe at yours without it sounding like a complaint. So you both stop describing. And that's all a friendship is. Descriptions across a table for years. Meanwhile, the new ones arrive. They're great. That's the confusing part. They're genuinely great. Interesting, generous, fast, funny. They pick up the check without a flicker. They introduce you to people. They know a guy for everything, and the guy is always good, and you can't tell. That's it. That's the whole thing at 250. You cannot tell. Some of them are the real thing, and some of them are running a longer play, and the two are indistinguishable from the inside, and you will not know which was which for years, and some of them you'll never know about at all. Everyone has a business idea for you now. Not for themselves, for you. There's always a deck. There's always a friend of a friend who's in already. There's always a reason the timing is right this quarter and won't be next. You develop a face for it. A patient, warm, unreadable face. You say, send it over. Sometimes you even read it. And you notice with a kind of grim humor that you've become exactly what the ant at 60,000 saw. A resource, except now it's the whole world. And it comes with much better food. The invitations multiply. The real conversations don't. You go from a table of 6 who've known you 15 years to a room of 40 who've known you 6 months, and the room is better lit, and the food is better, and nobody in it would notice if you didn't show. You catch yourself once at one of those dinners, 40 people, all of them delighted to see you, running a quiet inventory of who in the room would still take your call if the money stopped tomorrow. You get to 3. You stop counting because the answer isn't going to improve, and you already know it never will. 1 million a year, and now the thing comes full circle, and it lands nothing like you thought it would. Because at 0, the problem was that nobody treated you like a person. And at 1 million, the problem is that nobody treats you like a person. Different mechanism, same room, same fork in your hand, same quiet realization at somebody's dinner table that whatever's happening, it isn't about you. Nobody argues with you anymore. You say something half-baked, genuinely half-baked. You know it as it leaves your mouth, and it gets received like scripture. Heads nod. Someone writes it down. Nobody says, no, that's wrong, and you cannot remember the last time somebody said, no, that's wrong. At 0, you had no standing to disagree. At 1 million, nobody has the standing to disagree with you. Both are silence. Both leave you sitting there with the true version of things alone. You stop mentioning the number, then you stop mentioning anything adjacent to the number. You get vague about work. You get vague about the year you're having. When people ask how it's going, you say good, church, and busy, and you change the subject because the alternative is watching their face rearrange itself in real time. There's a specific expression. You'll see it 1,000 times. It's the one where somebody's warmth reorganizes into something else, evaluating, adjusting, calculating a distance. And it takes about a second and a half, and it happens before they've decided to do it. You can't blame someone for a face they didn't choose. So you get quiet, not humble, not principled, just tired. Tired of the second and a half. Tired of watching a conversation change shape. Tired of never again knowing what a room actually thinks of you. And then, in the middle of all of it, you notice the people who never did it. Ever. At any rung. They're a very short list. 4, maybe. Perhaps 2. They talk to you exactly the same way at 0, and they talk to you exactly the same way now. They give you a hard time. They tell you when you're wrong, casually, unmemorably, the way you tell anybody. They forget what you do for a living. They don't have a business idea. They don't have a favor. They have, at most, a question about your mother, and a thing they want to complain about, and a place they want to eat. They were like this before it was worth anything to be like this, which is the only proof of it that exists. And you realize you can't recruit them. There's no way to acquire more. The list was set years ago, before there was a number to react to. And every person on it earned their place by being kind to a man who had nothing to give them. You can't run that test twice. The window closed. That's the whole ladder. 6 rungs, 1 man, and the only relationships that survived the trip were the ones formed at the bottom of it, by people who couldn't have known where he was going. So here's the thing you understand at the top that you couldn't have understood anywhere else. None of them were reacting to you. The friend who went quiet at 0 wasn't judging you. He was looking at you and feeling something about his own margin, how close he might be to the same thing, and how much he did not want to look at that on a Sunday. The aunt who hinted at 60,000 didn't see a resource. She saw somebody who'd made it further than she had by an age she remembered clearly, and the hinting was a way to be near it, or to make it owe her something, or just to say out loud that things had been tight. Must Be Nice wasn't about your trip. It was about a person doing arithmetic on his own life, out loud, at a party, in a voice light enough to survive being overheard. The luck story wasn't about your career. It was a man protecting his own 10 years from a conclusion he did not want to reach about them. The new friends at 250, the deck, the guy who knows a guy, that was never a read on your judgment. That was a man who needed something to be different, and you were the nearest available lever. And the face at 1,000,000, the second and a half, the warmth reorganizing, that isn't about you either. It's a person, in real time, working out what your number says about their own, and arriving somewhere they didn't like, and having to keep their face doing something while they get there. Every reaction on the entire ladder was a mirror. Not one of them was a window. They looked at your number, and they saw their own, and everything they did next. The silence, the advice, the hinting, the jokes, the deck, the reverence, was them, handling that. Which means the man was never being treated well or badly at all. He was being used, at every rung, as a measuring stick, and measuring sticks don't get treated. They get read. You spend the whole climb thinking you're being evaluated. You're not. You're being subtracted from. Every single person you meet is doing the same piece of arithmetic, their number minus yours. And the answer they get is what comes out of their mouth next, and it never had anything to do with you. The only people who never ran the subtraction were the ones who never bothered to look at your number in the first place. That's the whole list. That's the entire finding. And it means the loneliness at the top and the loneliness at the bottom were never two different things. They were the same thing, viewed from opposite ends. A man in a room full of people who are all politely and warmly and without meaning any harm at all thinking about themselves. So, what do you do? 6 words. Casual, friendly, at a party, from someone you've just met. And in the half second before you answer, you already know exactly what's about to happen because you've watched it happen at 6 different altitudes now. You give them a number, and they hand you back a picture of themselves. You've had that number be nothing, and you've had it be everything, and the man holding it was identical both times. Same jokes, same laugh, same way of listening slightly too long before replying. He was never the thing being seen, he was just the light people were reading by.